Tusikilize yanayojiri kwa sasa.
Our foreign policy, thus successfully positioning our country as a champion of African affairs in the international arena. As the Cabinet Secretary for Foreign Affairs, I continue to amplify the President's Track 1 diplomacy by engaging my counterparts across the continent. We do all this for the good of our people, Kenya's national interest, and the prosperity of our continent. Ladies and gentlemen, based on the principle of interregional rotation, this is the time for Eastern Africa to nominate a candidate for the position of African Union Commission chairperson. Therefore, as per the schedule of the AU elections calendar, the deadline for the submission of the regional nominations to the AU Commission is 6th August 2024, 2 months from now. Overall, the campaigns are led by the state with highly experienced and knowledgeable officers. The State Department for Foreign Affairs has established a campaign secretariat which includes the candidate's strategy team. The secretariat will prepare all the briefs for use by the candidate, develop campaign materials, including digital presence, and prepare for the public debate to be broadcast live to African citizens. This will take place 6 months before the election date. Currently, the team is firming up preparatory and application documents together with requisite translations of the resume into 6 AU languages. That is French, English, Kiswahili, Arabic, Portuguese, and Spanish. This should be ready for submission to the AU Secretariat by the end of June 2024. An empirical campaign strategy has been developed, which includes identifying opportunities, challenges, and risks that our candidature faces. Additionally, the campaign involves outreach programs to capitals of AU member states, briefing of Kenya missions abroad, and engagements with diplomatic corps in Nairobi. Kenya is certain that our candidate, the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga, has credentials and the passion to advocate for Africa's interests globally and champion for more opportunities for Africa and her people. I now invite the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga to make his remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Wycliffe. We have had a meeting with the Prime Cabinet Secretary and Cabinet Secretary for Foreign and Diaspora Affairs, my brother, Honorable Wycliffe Mudavadi, who led a team of government officials. This was in regard to my candidacy for the African Union Commission chairmanship. I wish to reiterate the obvious, that I am vying for a position in Africa, not in the government of the Republic of Kenya. But I need the endorsement of the government of Kenya for that African position. At this meeting, we exchanged notes on the state of the quest so far, the preparations from my side and the government side, and the next steps that require to be taken. The Honorable Prime Cabinet Secretary shared with me the situation and levels of preparation and commitment in the government. I have been very encouraged by the number of senior government officials offering to be part of this journey out of an understanding that we are in this as Kenya and not as partisan political parties. I appreciate the offer of support. I shared with the government team the situation and my levels of preparation from outside the government. I assured the team that on my own, I'm making every effort, tapping into my experience, relationships, and understanding of the continent to win the support of as many nations as I can. With committed and proper coordination between my team and the government, we should be able to clinch the seat. We agreed that coordination and synergy are going to be critical as we embark on the next critical steps that include the submission of my application. We therefore agreed on the need for efficiency, the need to cut bureaucracy, and unveil a well-oiled and flexible joint effort going forward. Like all campaigns, plans emerge and change suddenly. Demands arise and change suddenly, and we need to be able to respond to them as suddenly as they emerge. We also agreed on the need to understand the sensitivities in this quest that include national, regional, continental, and global dimensions to this quest, and therefore the need to always act responsibly, bearing all these sensitivities in mind. Once again, I thank Kenyans and the government for the support, and we promise to keep updating the country on the status of the race. As I conclude, I just want to say that I have been requested by many friends, because many people have been surprised and been wondering how I came to this. Many of my friends from outside Kenya approached me and told me that this position of AU chairmanship is becoming vacant next year. They have looked around the continent and feel that among the people who may offer themselves, you have the best credentials to take this organization forward. After lots of soul-searching and consultations among my colleagues and friends, I made the decision to agree to accept the request. As you know that I had been the African Union High Representative on Infrastructure Development for 5 years. That position gave me an inside picture of what is happening in the AU, what the potentialities are in the AU, what are the challenges, and what are the weaknesses that they exist there. I believe that I have sufficient knowledge and experience to be able to move the AU forward. AU is an institution that was founded by the founding fathers of our nation. And their dream was an Africa that was united, an Africa that was cohesive, an Africa that was developed. The development of Africa can only be done by Africans. I am myself a Pan-Africanist and an Afro-optimist. Afro-optimists as opposed to Afro-pessimists. Afro-pessimists are the people who have given hope in Africa, say that Africa is a lost cause, it's a condemned continent. Afro-optimists are those who believe in the ability of the African people to develop Africa. That Africa, the richest continent on the planet Earth in terms of resources, is also the poorest in terms of development. This is the paradox that we want to solve. We want Africans to be able to take charge of Africa. We want to expand the communication and trade among the African people. I was telling my brother here that when I was a student in Europe in the 60s, it was a nightmare to travel across the continent of Africa, of Europe. In Europe, to move from one country to the other, you needed a visa. And if you did not have a visa to transit to one country, they arrested you at the border and returned you where you come from. Today, you can travel across the whole of Europe, the Schengen visa. You want to enter somewhere and you can go to all parts of Europe. Yet in Africa, you still have a problem. Aliko Dangote, one of the most prominent African businessmen, was saying just the other day that he needs 35 visas to travel across the continent of Africa. His French counterpart, who is his competitor, does not need, using a French passport. With a Nigerian passport, you need 35 visas to travel on the continent of Africa. You ask yourself why? Why can you not have one African visa? It can be done. We can connect the whole of this continent. And that's why I've been talking of the story of African lion. That the African lion must wake up now and claim the 21st century as the African century. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga. Ladies and gentlemen, having listened to Baba, I now wish to make the following concluding remarks. Indeed, despite the world becoming more fragmented and competitive, Kenya believes that multipolarity presents economic and geopolitical opportunities for Africa. Therefore, a whole of AU strategic approach to the emerging world will enable member states to project a common voice on global matters of consequence and enhance Africa's bargaining power for mutual benefit. And indeed, the Right Honorable Raila has summed this up. Therefore, for the continent to speak and act as one, the African Union Commission Chair the African Union will have to be more proactive and strategic in overcoming the persistent challenges that beset the African Union, namely funding shortages, logistical inadequacies, and the cyclic nature of conflicts. Additionally, the AU continues to grapple with cases of political instability and economic intricacies, weak international influence, and undue external influence, driven by a new Cold War in the continent. As a continent, we therefore need to focus on dimensions that promote our unity and enhance sustainable development for the citizens of Africa. This will include infrastructural connectivity and he has spoken briefly to that aspect from his previous assignment. Reduction in costs of doing business in the continent, accelerating the realization of the visa-free program, and promoting a common language for Africa. Also important is environmental protection of the climate environmental protection of the climate. The continent should work in one voice to campaign for reforms of the international organizations and global financial institutions. The AU should be represented on the strategic international institutions, including membership to co-decision-making organs of the UN. We shall promote functional non-alignment that strategically seeks to establish mutually beneficial relationships globally. I may just want to emphasize here that the chairman of the AU Commission also holds the seat for Africa on the G20 forum. Ladies and gentlemen, the candidate, Honorable Raila Odinga, is a renowned champion of Think Africa above all. As per the AU values and inherently motivated by the AU vision, an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa driven by its citizens and representing a dynamic force in the global arena. Our continental body should increase Pan-African awareness among a critical mass of citizens and promote the Africanization of our elites to proudly contribute to Africa's development goals and discourses. Kenya therefore envisions an AU that drives the continent beyond silencing the guns to achieving positive peace, sustainable peace, and security for collective prosperity. We have a long experience of supporting the AU and regional bodies, as well as bilateral engagements to foster peace and security regionally and globally. We envisage an AU that will give a greater voice to the continental crisis that have often become forgotten conflicts, as other global crises elsewhere get huge humanitarian and political attention. As a government and a country, we wish the Right Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga God's speed in this noble endeavor for the continent. God bless Kenya and God bless Africa. Asanteni sana. Maybe there could be just a few questions.
Thank you, Excellency. We'll have a few questions. We have Brenda, step forward.
Thank you so much. I have a couple of questions that can be answered by both the candidates, Right Honorable Raila Odinga and...
the Saudi?
Oh, sorry. I have a couple of questions that could be answered by either the candidate, the Right Honorable Raila Odinga, or the Prime Cabinet Secretary. You have told us you have told us about the benefits that Africa stands to gain from Mr. Raila's candidature. What does Kenya stand to gain strategically for you going for that AU seat? And secondly, the Prime Cabinet Secretary has told us that the President and yourself have been already reaching out to your counterparts from the region and beyond the region, the East African region, trying to get support and push for Mr. Raila's candidature. What is the status of that push? Thank you. Oh, my name is Brenda Wanga from Citizen TV.
Okay, maybe I'll comment first.
Okay.
First of all, a prosperous Kenya is dependent on a prosperous Africa. And we want to make it very clear that As Raila champions issues that affect the Africa continent, Kenya is part and parcel of what he shall be championing. So we are sure that as he moves across the continent, Kenya is also a beneficiary. The second aspect of it, from a Kenyan perspective, we must look at it also as a national interest. This is not a localized issue. It's not a village challenge. This is a national interest for the people of Kenya as they prepare to offer leadership to the African continent. And as I said, we see an embodiment of those national interests in Raila's candidacy.
Thank you. Well, Kenya is part of Africa. So what Kenya is going to get is equivalent to what the rest of Africa is going to get. If we improve matters in Africa, Kenya becomes a beneficiary. One example I want to give is inter-African trade. Inter-African trade currently stands at only 15%. Africa trades very little with itself. Inter-European trade stands at 70%. Inter-Asian trade is now getting towards 60%. Even South America stands at about 30%. But Africa does not trade with itself for reasons, some of which are actually solvable, or problems solvable. You see, there are non-tariff barriers which have been introduced by some African countries, which makes it very difficult for goods to move from one African country to another African country. Secondly, there is infrastructure challenges that makes it very difficult for Africa to trade with itself. You know, Africa Continental Free Trade Area Agreement is now 2 years old, but still very little progress has been made, mainly because of these two major barriers. As the High Representative on infrastructure, I realized the challenges. Like you've been talking about intra-African highways, the Cape to Cairo, the Dakar to Djibouti, Dakar, Lagos, Lagos, Mombasa, and so on and so forth. We've been talking about the continental high-speed railway network, one Beira to Walvis Bay, one the old Benguela line, Lobito to Lubumbashi. The other one is the high-speed railway along the coast from Lagos to Cairo. The other one is our LAPSET, the Lamu Port, South Sudan, Ethiopia Transport Corridor, which as a representative of the AU on on infrastructure, we actually extended from Juba through Bangui in Central African Republic to the Port of Cameroon to create a land bridge that links the Atlantic Ocean to the Indian Ocean and opening up the interior of the continent, which are landlocked for trade. See, for example, Kenya grows tea. How does Kenya export its tea to Central African Republic? Between Kenya and Central African Republic, there's only South Sudan. South Sudan is the only country between Kenya and Central African Republic. But how do you take the tea there? There's no infrastructure. You have to find a ship that will go around the Cape, along the western coast, to the Cameroonian port of Douala, and then by road to Bangui. The French are there ahead of you. That's why they drink in Bangi Kenyan tea, Christian as English breakfast tea. But with a lab set, we can be able to take our goods there. But this infrastructure cannot be developed country by country. You need to have a mechanism at the center that is coordinating funding for this infrastructure. If you want to do the lab set, Kenya can only do its part up to the border with South Sudan. Then South Sudan needs to take it from there to the border with Central African Republic. Central African Republic takes it to Cameroon and to reach there. But you need a center to be able to coordinate funding, to mobilize funding for this infrastructure development, which are cutting across the continent. That is why those things have not been done. That's why even the trans-African highways have not been done, and so on. So getting there, we are also talking about the high-speed fiber optic network connecting all the African capitals. We're talking about open skies to be able to move freely in the African airspace without so much impediment. At the moment, traveling across Africa is a major problem. Recently, when I was going to the funeral of the president of Namibia, we chartered an aircraft here. We had to spend 3 hours at Wilson Airport waiting for clearances of airspaces, the transit countries. You have to get a clearance to fly over Tanzanian airspace, DRC, Zambia, Botswana, and Namibia itself. And it's expensive. The other day, I was in Dar es Salaam going to Niamey in Niger. There, I spent 10 hours waiting. You need a clearance over Uganda, over DRC, over Central African Republic, over Cameroon, Nigeria, and Niger. And that is what is making the air transport in the continent so expensive. It is easier to move goods by air. You need to put the facilities across the continent. And then have also an African continental air traffic control. In Europe, you only need one permit and you can fly all over the countries of Europe. Here you need to get permission from Nairobi, Dar es Salaam, Kinshasa, Lusaka, going down those sides. So all these are what is making inter-African trade difficult. I've told you about the issues of visas. It's another problem, and so on and so forth. We've been talking about making the Nile River navigable so that you can be able to move from Mediterranean Sea to Lake Victoria. Ships can move from Europe and don't have to go around the Horn to come to our coastal side. You can go direct on the Nile to Lake Victoria and land there in Jinja, in Kampala, in Kisumu, and in Mwanza. Those are some of the projects that will be done. And if you open up those way, Kenya will be a major beneficiary, and Africa generally. So we have ideas which you think, if implemented, will improve the inter-African trade. Thank you.
Asante sana. Thank you so much, Your Excellency. In the interest of time, Your Excellency, we are unable to take more questions because the Prime Space is needed somewhere in Nandi in the next few. More? Okay, one question.
Excellencies, my name is Mwangi Maina from the Isili Voice. First question to the former Premier. Some Kenyans and some Africans feel that Nairobi fronting your candidature is a way of settling domestic political scores. Do you think you're exporting domestic politics to Addis Ababa? The other question to you, former Premier, it's about the Kenya stance, Kenya openly standing with Israel, which has been committing a genocide in Gaza. Do you think this could potentially impact your candidature at the African Union Commission next year because of such global geopolitical standing?
Asante Mwangi, thank you.
No, I mean, I'm a Kenyan, and as I mentioned, nobody has asked me. The Kenya government did not ask me. I made a decision myself that I want to offer myself to serve the continent. And as you know, you cannot run for this position without being sponsored by your country. Your candidature is not valid until your country has said yes. So I was myself pleasantly surprised that the Kenya government said they would support me. I was expecting them to say no. I don't know the reason why they said yes. That is their own decision, it's not mine.
I will tell you why we said yes. We said yes because Raila is competent. Yes. And we are looking at Kenya's national interests and Africa's national interests. So this is not about our local issues. And we do not want, and we really want to get the Fourth Estate to help us to project the national interests of Kenya, because it would be a first for Kenya. And it would be an opportunity for Kenya to offer leadership to the African Union. And Raila Amolo Odinga has got the requisite experience. As I said in another forum, he has seen both hot and cold. And Africa is beaming with both hot and cold. And Raila is required on the African continent.
Your Excellency.
On the issue of Israel, it's just, I think yesterday, the Gaza issue, I issued a very clear statement on behalf of the Republic of Kenya, where I said that Kenya stands for a two-state solution, so that Israel stands as a nation, and the people of Palestine should also have their state as a nation. So under no circumstances is Kenya favoring one against the other. What is important is that the conflict in the Middle East, like in other where there is conflict elsewhere, we call for a peaceful resolution as soon as possible, because the humanitarian crisis is huge.
Your Excellency, my name is Jeff Kirui from KTN News.
Jeff.
Yes.
We are done, Jeff. Please, Jeff.
Please, Your Excellency.
Tafadhali, Prime anafaa kwenda mbali. Tafadhali. Let's end it there.
Yes, the question is regarding EAC. They have been pushing for one candidate. The newest kid on the block, Somalia, has its candidate. In the eastern region, we have Djibouti and Seychelles who also have candidates. Is it a concern to you that this might complicate matters, considering the two-third requirement to clinch the seat? And also, could you clarify on the composition of your campaign team?
As I said here, that we are focusing on Kenya's candidacy.
Yeah.
Other countries that have their wish to front a candidate will speak about their own. Yes. But for now, as far as we are concerned, we have a long journey to go to campaign, and our candidate is Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga. And as I indicated in my earlier remarks, that the strategy is in place, and we shall be looking at all the challenges and opportunities as we go along. And I think I should also tell you that subsequent to this, I think the lady had asked, I want to emphasize that our president has also made several strides in talking to his counterparts across Africa. And all that, I'm sure, will count for something in the next few months. Thank you.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We are now going to the next session, photo session, very quickly. Can I be assisted to move the podiums, please?